Yeah, we're live. It's a little late. Just got back from dinner. But it's all good because we've got cool stuff to talk about tonight. The thumbnail that I posted up and the question for tonight and the discussion before we get into excuse me, question and answer stuff is the following thing. What about do-it-yourself turbo kits? How bad does the exhaust manifold have to be to where the kit no longer works? You can see the stock exhaust manifolds on the HEMI, on the Ram, not great. The SRT8 stuff, obviously much better. Any kind of shorty header, much better. Long tubes, if you want to do that, you could do that. Or dedicated turbo manifolds. As an FYI, if you take a set of LS headers and put them up to a HEMI, they line up perfectly. So if you had an adapter plate and you had like the tubular headers, which I was going to do this, and you have the tubular headers like that we ran on the Big Bang LS motor, made an adapter plate to go from the HEMI pattern to the Chevy pattern, you could bolt Chevy manifolds right to it and they would work just fine. The 5.7 early Ram exhaust manifolds, some of the worst, at least late model exhaust manifolds that I've ever seen. Not great. But the thing is, or the question is for tonight, do you think that those will work? Do you think that those will work on a turbo application? The obvious answer, and you guys probably already know this because this video is already up actually, it does work. But the question is not really how well does it work, but I mean, does it work or not? The question really is how well does it work? Can we still make good power? On this particular application, on the one that I have the thumbnail up on, that was a stock motor, bone stock. I had bought it from a eBay source that had all of these, takeout motors. Wasn't even one that I went to get myself. But we got this motor, uncrated it, put it up on the dyno. We did a few tests on it. I think I ran Nitrous on it. We tried testing the SRT8 manifolds on it. We ran a few other intake manifolds on it. Eventually put a cam in it. But before we did that, we ran this turbo setup on it. And I did this I think I did this for David Freiberger at Hot Rod. Either Hot Rod or Carcraft, one of those. I think it was Hot Rod because we did a single turbo on a junkyard HEMI, and then we also did one on a junkyard 462 valve, and then we also did one on a junkyard, I'm thinking it was an LS also, probably a 4.8 or a 5.3. And they were just bone stock. This one we didn't do ring gap or anything else, but we didn't run a lot of boost on it either. I think we ran this thing up to, I don't know, something near 600 horsepower or something, maybe a little bit more than that. Just to show that you could put boost on an all stock motor and it would work. I mean, at least it worked on the dyno. And the easiest way to do that, and the easiest way to do a turbo kit for any motor, is to use what's there. It's the least expensive way. That's why we run the stock exhaust manifolds. And we had to make a dedicated Y pipe for the LS that we always run. But using the stock exhaust manifolds does two things. On the LS, it works really well, and we did the same thing on the HEMI. It works really well. We know that they're stout. We know that they'll retain heat. We know that they have spark plug access. For me, that's the big thing. They have spark plug access, and they don't burn plug wires. It's a big deal when you're trying, especially if you're driving it around. The last thing you want to do is be driving, like, let's say that you want to go to Rocky Mountain Raceway or whatever, or the dragway thing or whatever, somewhere you have to drive around a lot. The last thing you want is a plug wire that's close to the header, so that even if it doesn't burn immediately by touching it and destroy itself quickly, which actually would be better, it gets hot and does it over time, makes the wire start cracking. Then it goes out in the middle of nowhere, which is even worse. I'd rather have it burn immediately, and then I go, okay, I either need to address this problem and change something with the design of the header or the wrap the wire. I can remember back when I ran World Challenge with the guys from Bear Racing, we had a set of plug wires, and then we were trying to run equal length shorty headers, I think, on the motor that we were running in World Challenge. It was a B class naturally aspirated Mustang, unfortunately for us. But those were notorious for burning headers, for burning spark plug wires. Those headers were. And so what I had to do is, and it had burned it before, and it was getting pretty bad. It was cracking and stuff. And so what I did was and we did this overnight over a period of many, many hours, and I would just put layers of silicone because also that's all we had was silicone in a tube, and I would just put layers over it and let it dry and put another layer and another layer and another layer, and we even used high temp stuff, and hopefully that would be enough, because all we were looking at is being able to finish the race. It was like a 1 hour race, so we were looking at being able to finish that. We knew that it was too close. We knew it was going to burn. We knew that we couldn't, bend or weld the shorty manifold to be able to fix what we were needing to do. We needed to change the exhaust basically. And so this was our fix, because this is all we had. We didn't even have other plug wires. So we had to fix what we had, and that's how we fixed it. And it worked. We made the race. But it was, by the end of the race, it was pretty bad. It was still running, but it's something I definitely would have replaced. And we ended up doing that. And we ended up taking those junky equal length shorty headers on it, because that's everybody knows by now, I've done many of these tests, that does nothing. It's just, especially at that power level, it's just a waste of time. You should put long tubes on it, and that's what we should have been running on there. I don't know. I don't remember if that was a class problem or not. But so the stock exhaust manifolds work well. And I also ran the stock exhaust manifolds. We ran stock exhaust manifolds on the Cadillac, which interestingly enough, either the Cadillac or the Buick, I think it was the Cadillac, has a cracked set of exhaust manifolds. So with heat and pressure, obviously we have an exhaust leak there, but I don't think it was bad. I mean, we still got boost. So we ran the stock exhaust manifolds on that. We ran the stock exhaust manifolds, I think, on the Buick 455 as well. And it just goes to show you can run them with a small block Chevy, and especially like most of the motors that we're talking about, with the possible exception of the Buick, most of the motors we're talking about have other exhaust options for you. So some of them will have dedicated turbo stuff. Certainly all the LS and big block and small block and Ford and all that. I think the Hemi probably has that by now too. And if not, the factory SRT8 manifolds, which we've used a lot, work very well. But some motors that guys are putting together, maybe an FE, maybe if you were doing a 4.7 Dodge, maybe if you're doing a 318 poly motor, or just something weird, an AMC motor, maybe we're not going to see much for those. Maybe some of these 6-cylinder deals, you're not going to see a dedicated exhaust manifold. The nice thing is a lot of the later model stuff, they have really good exhaust manifolds, and they work excellently for a turbo application. Because like with the LS stuff, it may not flow the best, and we know that if we replace those with long tube headers, we would pick up power, but they work very well for turbo applications. I'd rather give up some flow potential and have them do all the other criteria. They fit and don't burn plug wires, and we can take the spark plugs in and out. And the other thing that we know about a stock exhaust manifold is it will last forever. It will still be there when everything else on the motor has like rusted away and disintegrated into nothing. The stock exhaust manifolds are like, hey, where did everybody go? I'm still ready. I'm ready for more boost. So we know that they'll last a long time, and they also obviously keep heat in, especially when we have the heat shields on, like the factory heat shields. Those are pretty cool. But this Hemi, the one in the photo, actually ended up doing fairly well. Like I said, we made over 600 horsepower. Let's see. I think I have this written down, because I'm also doing one on the doing modular Ford stuff. The LS video is up right now. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but not up for everybody. Only up for the people that have that link. Hemi power. Yeah, we made over 627. So that's pretty good. I mean, and that was just boost. And I want to say that it was in, I think, that's around 10 pounds. So it did good. That motor made that 5.7 made 385 all stock the way that we run it, and 410 or 418 foot-pounds of torque. So it was a pretty stout piece, and we ended up doing lots and lots with that motor. I had that one way back, and we did a bunch of stuff with it. The Hemi has, like with an LS, has really good cylinder heads. Even that early one, which is the worst of all of them, even those are really good. Has good intake manifold. I've tested the truck manifold, which works very well. I've tested the Magnum manifold, which is kind of my favorite because it's composite. The SRT8, if you want to run a little bit higher RPM, there are other obviously aftermarket manifolds, but all of those work well. And then in the later stuff, the dual runner manifolds are even cooler, as are the later heads. The Eagle and Apache stuff is even better. So I have a quick question for people out there. If I have any Hemi guys out there, I had somebody call me and ask me, and I wasn't sure about this question. and I was trying to do some research on it. But on the late model Hemis, I know that there are two different blocks. There are early and late ones. But my question is, and I also think that there are two different oil pans for those. I don't think that a later oil pan will bolt on to an early one. I could be wrong. I don't think that they do. I don't think that they interchange. His question is that he wants to, it's a later motor. He wants to change to a rear sump pan, and he sees a lot of these Dorman pans out there, and they're not listing what years they are for. So he definitely needs a later one. So let me know if you guys know if those things are interchangeable, or if there are different options for him, or which way he should probably go. I'm really looking forward to running a, speaking of Hemis, I'm really looking forward to running a late model Hemi, because we know with, and the same thing with, I'm looking forward to running boost on the 5.3 L83, especially seeing how much power the guys from Bride Tooley Racing have made with their 5.3 junkyard motor, although they have a bunch of crate versions of this. And I think that after we show how much power they can make, people should probably buy all those up, because these motors were, you know, well into the mid to high 500 horsepower ranges with the 220 cam in it, and that's pretty impressive for a 5.3. I mean, I think that the one that we're doing the video on is up like at near 550 or 560 horsepower, which is really impressive given the duration on the camshaft. Because, you know, if you think about a 5.3, an LM7, or even an L33 or an LC9 or something like that, you think about something like that, even if it has ported heads on it, but a camshaft that only has 220 degrees of duration at 50, I don't care what you do with the exhaust duration, it could be 250 degrees. And then if you can do whatever you want to the LSA and the valve vents and all that stuff, it's going to be really difficult to make the kind of power that we were seeing out of this L83 deal. So it's impressive stuff. And then when we put boost to that, obviously, I mean, we're not going to do that one because I think that has probably a ported and maybe a milled head and that kind of stuff on it. But if we put boost to that, even something that's making 500 or 525 or whatever the number is, you start having real power numbers at some fairly low boost levels. And so imagine what that thing is going to be like. You know, it's it's going to be big power. It'll be interesting to see how far we can take one of those, because I promised Brian that we would do a big bang on that on my 5.3. I think that it's still in good shape as far as I know. If you guys haven't seen it, take a look at here, I'll put this up again so you guys can see it. Paste. So here is the link that I just posted is the link to the video that other people can't see. Only you people here at the live feed, and obviously the people that are going to watch this after this is no longer live. But by that time, I will have done the thumbnail for the video, which I haven't done yet. And then I can post the video or release the video essentially and allow everybody to see it. But right now, you guys can go to that link and watch that video, and maybe you guys can do dual screens so nobody leave. I mean, you know, we want you here, but you guys can go ahead and watch that, and it's just a little benefit for the guys that come here and do the live stuff, because, you know, it's my boys, yo. Okay, let's get to hold their tax. I hope not. I mean, I hate it. You know, it's nice to have lots of views on the video when we did the low buck adapters from the guys at Mac Daddy Parts with the Cadillac blower. And I always wanted to do that Cadillac blower. And I can't believe how it blew up. And it was just ridiculous to see the price change, because then my phone was blowing up with messages and all this stuff. And not because people were wanting to contact me, but they're all saying, yeah, thanks, Richard, look at this. And they were showing me screenshots of prices that were like a half an hour, 2 hours, whatever apart, and showing them going from next to nothing, where people were giving them away because nobody else wanted to do the work to do what it took to make them work, and actually see them and see what they do and all that, and then see the price of those blowers all go up because everyone's like, oh yeah, like these things are home runs now. And I'm hoping that the same thing doesn't happen with the L83. And also I talked to Tom today, and maybe he might be here tonight, about the setup that he shipped out to me so that we can run the 112 and the 122 blowers from the 5.4 Shelby stuff. So we put those on an LS, which will be cool. and it's also intercooled, which will make it work well, like the Cadillac deal did. 4200 power is also coming. I'm sure Mark saw the stuff that Calvin posted recently on his deal, and he sent me another message today saying that he thinks maybe the motor might not be hurt, which is kind of good news. I need the Truck Norris cam, Type 107 LSA choppy idle. That cam does not have a choppy idle, because the LSA is not the only thing that dictates how the camshaft idles. 107 LSA on a camshaft that only has 200 degrees of duration at 50 on the intake is not going to idle bad. One that has 230 degrees of intake duration, and especially one that has lots of exhaust duration with that tight of an LSA, that's going to have idle issues. The final, let's see, I was just driving my draw through 86 LeBaron 2.2, as you should, because that's awesome. It has a little lag, but pull is good, especially for being 35 years old. Most older turbo cars like the Pro GT or Saabs are blowing smoke. That's good that the 2.2 is doing good. I like to hear that. And that's cool that it's a draw-through one as well. Are you going to put an intercooler on it? Would you gap rings on a 220,000 LY6? Yes, I would. Almost all of the Big Bang motors were very high mileage. The Gen 4 6-liter had 249,000 miles on it. The LY6 that we did, the Gen 4 motor, had less, but it still had 140 or 50, I think. Most of them were in the 180 to 200 range. That one Gen 3 6-liter had the most, because that actually came from Chad Reynolds' Suburban. And he said he thought it felt like it was down on power, but we ran it on the dyno and it seemed to work good. And it had iron heads on it. We took the iron heads off of it. My wife wants to cam her Suburban, do a DOD delete. That's a good idea. Then definitely look at the Truck Norris cam. Gen 5.62s. Those are impressive. He's got some LT1s that are doing 750 or 760, I think. So they're making lots of power. How much power will the M112 support? I don't know. I've never run one all the way up, and I haven't seen anybody run one all the way up. I've seen guys try to spin the heck out of the blowers, but when they're doing those, a lot of times when I was seeing those, they're doing them on kind of stock motors, which is not going to get you the maximum flow rate of the blower, because the boost pressure is going to be fairly high. Ideally, you want to spin that thing very fast. Let's say 20,000 RPM. Let's say that's a maximum engine speed. Shout out to Tom. Thank you for being here. If you want to spin that blower at 20,000 RPM, the closer that you can get the discharge boost of that by modifying the motor, the closer you can get that to 0 PSI, the more flow you'll get and the more power you'll make. A lot of people don't understand that. Well, why would I not want to run 10 pounds or 20 pounds? Well, if you take the stock motor and you're running 20 pounds on it and you put cams in it and it drops the boost down to 18 pounds, that means that you made more power because the motor became more efficient. I mean, you could theoretically alter the cam timing so that you're allowing boost to bleed out, especially on a supercharged combination, as opposed to a turbo that has a bunch of back pressure. You can screw up the cam timing and do that, but you've screwed up the cam timing such that it makes terrible NA power, and that's kind of all that you've done. So if you can do, like for instance, if we ran that blower at maximum blower speed with a big throttle body and all that, and we ran on a 4.8 that made 300 horsepower. We take that same blower and the same blower speed and put it on a 408, a modified one with heads and cam and intake that's already making 600 horsepower. That blower is going to make at least 600 horsepower, and it's probably going to make more than that. But whatever the boost was on the 4.8, it's going to be half or less on the bigger displacement motor, and that's a desirable thing. Less boost on a blower is a good idea, as long as you have the blower speed and the flow rate. Hi, Richard. Do the rings get the same amount of gap, whether it's nitrous, supercharger, turbocharger? I run the same. I guess you could. I guess a guy could make a theoretical argument about that, about nitrous being cool and not having the same EGTs, turbocharging, depending on how you were doing it, not having as much back pressure and not having as much temperature in the ring, and nitrous. Normally, a nitrous guy is not on the throttle under nitrous for as long as a guy is on a, or could be on a supercharged or turbocharged application. It'd be rare for a guy with nitrous to be legging this thing out like in the silver state, like I did, or even like a roll race thing. If you're on the throttle for a minute, let's say, in the quarter mile, the times could be all similar, but the time under boost or under nitrous could be similar. But you know, out on the street or racing, like I was talking about, or taking these turbo or supercharged versions on a road course. Although I've run nitrous on a road course and it works very well. So Brian, you're saying the newer HEMI pan, I'm assuming, is longer because of the VVT. Okay. Final Roman, here is my email address. Oh, you found the air box. Cool. I need an air box and I need the inlet tubes, which I know are kind of the hard things. The discharge tube and the inlet tube. Jacobs, I'd like to build a rear mount twin turbo for my 4-door Ram. Jacobs, take a look at the lag videos that I put up. But the thing is that your distance, if you're going to put it like in the bed of your truck, is nowhere near as long as I did. And then if you make the tubing smaller than I did, you know, we kind of purposely made it oversized. And if you run them together as a single and did it that way, you could do twins, and that works too. What guys usually do is undersize the exhaust tubing to the turbo, and possibly even undersize the turbo a little bit to get more response rate. You need to see a build on a Ford. Honestly, I have two barrel motors, which we're going to do something with. Mark, you unwrap the ported 4200 head off the black opal. It needs 2 valve guides and a bushing. Okay, did they hurt it or something? Your question about inducers and exducers, a lot of guys want to separate the two things and ask which one is more important. They do that with same thing with the hot side and the cold side, and you can't do that. The inducer and the exducer are obviously going to be linked in the design of the wheel. So I don't think that you would want to look at them separately. Guys are saying you need rods and pistons for a turbo LS to handle 1,000 horsepower. Okay. Well, we already know that that's not true. I'm wondering if you can eBay DIY blow through turbo 302 with an HEI distributor and manual boost controller. I want to do the cheapest row build. That would work fine. Your most expensive thing is going to be a blow through carburetor. I want to see you run a motor with a second compression ring. What do you mean I'm looping, Mark? Yeah, I'm not surprised that Brian is run out of those truck Norris cams. They're very popular. Turbo diesel Dan, yeah, those are fairly common numbers for GT500 stuff. I did a lot of testing with the guys at Kenny Bell, and they ran the stock blowers up quite a bit. I think to as small a pulley as they could fit on there. And I'd have to go back and look at their data, but I want to say that those things would do. I think that the 122, I think that thing is going to support 700 or more flywheel. Taryn, twins usually do reduce exhaust back pressure, but especially if you run two of the same size as the same size as the single, which we showed in the twin GT45 versus a single GT45. But you could also put twins that are small enough to increase back pressure. I don't know why you would, but that's possible, and that's just a function of the size of the turbos that you're comparing. What what kind of shape are they in? Would they work so that the thing could start and be smogged and everything? Your recommendation, a 243 or a 317 head. The 243 head will make more power at any given boost level, but the 317 head, if it's already on the motor, works just fine and will be able to top out the usual turbos that most people use. So if you have 1,000 horsepower turbo, 317 heads will allow you to make 1,000 horsepower. Oh, number 4 rod let go. That's not good. Wes, the people that I don't own the Barra motors, the guy that owns them is selling these two. One of them will probably be mine. I've already taken it apart and we're doing stuff on it. The other one is all together and ready to go. And you could, if you're interested, I can get you in touch with the people that own it. The 317 and 243 are both cathedral port heads, Tim. Are you talking about putting it on a? Maybe I don't understand what you're saying there. The Daniel, the Weisco pistons I bought a couple of years ago suggested different gaps for different power adders. I don't know why they would differentiate those other than the things that we were just talking about. If you're trying to max those out, we put a lot of ring gap in it. There's no downside to that. The most ineffective turbo system was the Callaway. Wow, shots fired. They were very low RPM motors. Kevin, thank you very much. Mile High State, I always wondered why they sell low octane fuel up here. Yeah. Detonation does change with altitude because you're not making nearly as much cylinder pressure because you're not making power. At that octane, there's not enough oxygen molecules. Rob, you have to figure out whether the 12 horsepower motor is enough to spin the blower at the target flow rate and boost of the blower that you're trying to do. 12 horsepower is not going to spin a very much supercharger. Brian, you could run 10 pounds on a 305 without any problem. Just put ring gap in it. And since you're going to take it apart, you're putting gaskets in it. And at 10 pounds, I might not go to ARP studs, but I like them and they're a good upgrade. Test of extremes, a 2-inch exhaust, 6-inch inlet to the manifold. I don't know what, are you talking about a 6-inch diameter discharge tube? We already ran 3.5 or 4-inch discharge tubes and made it both big and really long and didn't see a dramatic change. Okay, Wes, send me an email. I put my email in the comments. Brandon, I've never even run a single VGT turbo on the engine dyno anyway. I think we probably have on the chassis dyno. Yeah, camshaft. Look at this lobe. Can you see this lobe? See that? Can you see that? Yeah, that one's not good. That's a test cam from, not even a test cam, a cam that I ran the motor a long time ago. What the heck was this thing? This was, I don't know, some kind of comp deal. Could you use the inlet of the turbo to create negative pressure in the crankcase? Yes, you can, just like you do on an NA motor, drawing the pressure into the crankcase, but then you're also drawing in oil vapor, which is not a good idea. The Mr. Davidson, would a water methanol injection system extend the horsepower limits of a stock block? It's not going to have an effect on what the strength of the stock block is. It will save it from detonation, which could destroy the block. Joe, the jet sizes are going to be listed in any kind of kit that you get. Normally we would run like a 46 is about 100. And we ran 78. We ran all the way up to 100s. And that was about 300. But they all have listing for jet sizes, and some of them skew the numbers because I don't know if their jet size is actually an indication of the flow orifice size. There should be a direct correlation, so they should all be the same. But if you look at the jets from the different manufacturers, the designs of the jets are different. And I haven't flowed them, but I suspect that they do flow differently. And also the flow rate and the amount of nitrous that you inject into the motor with that jet size is going to be a function of the bottle pressure and how full it is. So there's a lot of things that are going to affect it. But if you look at a 46 as being about 100 horsepower, that should give you a pretty good idea. I don't need a water pump housing anymore for the 2.2 liter. I have one already. Roman, I think I have an intercooler, and I have the I think I have the mounts for it, and I might have the might also have the radiator. Jose, the LTs are the same price as the LSs if you can get them in the right kind of yard. That's good that you're getting it, but the thing that you're going to have trouble dealing with is you want the whole harness and everything, because you're going to have to deal with the drive-by-wire stuff. You're going to have to deal with variable cam timing. You're going to have to do with high-pressure direct injection. So you're going to have to, the feed pump going to the direct injection is going to be important, but that's kind of a standard high pressure, high flow fuel pump, like a 340 or so, depending on how much power you want to make. So you can feed that with a standard one, but you have to make sure that all of that stuff is there. Truck and travel, if you take a look at the The question is, have you ever run a stock 5.3 LS with a 671 blower? I haven't run a stock 5.3, but we have run a Stroker 383 version of a 5.3 with a 671 on it. But the 671 will go on a stock 5.3 exactly the same because it's, you know, effectively the same motor. It just has more bore and stroke, and we had camshaft and cylinder head on it so that it made good NA power. I think it made 525 or something NA. It did pretty well. If you put a 671 on a stock 350 horsepower 5.3, which is what they make when we run them, you know, it's not going to be stellar. It would work a lot better if it had, like we had, if it had more displacement, if it had more compression, if it had a lot more cylinder head flow, and the biggest thing is that it had a lot better than stock camshaft. Yeah, Rob, the 243s will work really good. And I think that, Eric, I think that there's also somebody has an electric smog pump. I think that the 4200 that I have, I don't think I have it on there anymore. That I think that came with an electric smog pump. I think Mark told me that. And then also, I think maybe one of the modular Fords did. Single bank turbo on a V6, like the guys from Saab, their asymmetrical turbo, that obviously works. They did it. I tried it on a big block and was not successful, but I do want to try that again. You would be hard pressed on your 408 build, your 11-to-1 with ported LS3 heads and that 227 cam. You're going to be hard pressed to do something better than the factory LS3 intake manifold. Take a look at the LS3 intake test video that I did, and you'll see it's really hard to do better than that factory intake. And if you do, you're going to trade power somewhere. I will be putting a turbo on the Magnum. I'm not going to run a million pounds of boost, but the Magnum will definitely get boost. I also kind of really want to run a 318 Magnum. I don't think a smog pump will provide enough flow for a 305. You want to run twins, internal wastegates, so I have a 355-2. I'm thinking that that's a 2-bolt main. This is plausible for space and piping needed on an F body. Yeah, you can run twins. That's fine. Poor man's centrifugal blower. Two inches up to 3.5-inch exhaust on the turbo hot side. You want to run 3.5 inches, a 3.5-inch exhaust up to the turbo, like 3.5-inch primary diameter headers or something. 2-inch to 6-inch cold side. The LS3 guys buy the fast intakes. Well, they shouldn't, because it doesn't add any power. Not on an LS3. On a cathedral port, they add a lot. Goodfellas, thanks. I'll check my email later. Rocky, I don't know specifically when you need a high volume pump. I don't know that that's an absolute thing. The LM7 fuel rail, you can make 1,000 horsepower with it. I haven't seen one of the Outlaw LS7 blocks the mass guys have done. Bob, are you road racing this car, or autocrossing it or something? Because you can left foot brake these things to keep the boost up. An LY6 with twins works very well, as we've as we've seen on the Big Bang stuff. Yeah, Mark is saying the 4200 out electric pump. 97 Air Mercedes, 2000 Blazer and Taurus. Okay. Final Roman, the Gen 3 or the Gen 3 RX-7, the twin turbo was a sequential turbo, had a small one and a big one. Can you do a 481X stuff or not budget friendly enough? What is the 481X? Tell me what that is. Joe, we normally would take away, and depending on the size of the shot and also the fuel that you're using, like if you're running an 11-to-1 NA motor, but you're running it on C16 on a 100 shot, I wouldn't take away any timing. But you know, the normal rule of thumb is 4 degrees per 100 horsepower of nitrous. So Bob, you were able to watch that. This is the first time I've done that, so hopefully you guys will. So we'll just call you Monday. Yeah, you seem to have a lot of like esoteric questions. And obviously I can't answer all those because a lot of them are theoretical. Mopar guys wear the 318s better. That's why a guy needs to test those, right? You want to drive a remote blower for a 454? The best thing to do is route the exhaust to a turbo. Chris, what's going on? Your ears are ringing. Hoping they've been I was talking to the, unfortunately, my machinist is at SEMA show, which a lot of guys are. So I'm waiting to hear back to find out what condition the 84 2.2 is. And when I go down to West Tech, I'm actually going to go by and see the guy that I bought the car from. And I think he has a couple of motors sitting there. So I might buy one of those from him. Yeah, the Wallace Racing stuff, if you guys are not familiar with that, he's got a lot of really good stuff, compression calculators and all kinds of stuff that I go to all the time. Bob, I've run turbo motors in autocross, and left foot braking works pretty good. I remember doing a shootout with my Mustang, and we were doing a test at the Streets of Willow, and we were doing we did the Streets of Willow, so we did a road course deal, we did a slalom, and we did a I think we did a skid pad deal, you know, to see what the skid pad rating was. And Don Alexander was driving it, and he said, I want you to give it a try since you drive this car all the time, and see if you can, because you just time it and multiply it out and see what the number is. And we were trying to get it to, I don't know, 0.95 or 1.0 or whatever the good number was. But and he, after I came back in, he said you actually went pretty fast. He goes, why did I see the brake lights on? I said, because when I do it, and you're just driving around in a circle, basically trying to stay in a pre-described circle. And he said, why is the brake light on? I said, because I'm left foot braking. I said, I find that when I'm doing this, most guys would, in that instance, would balance the car with the throttle. I said, but I can balance the car with the 2-pedal deal. And I find that for me, it does a lot better. He goes, that's a really good idea. He said, because you could kind of maybe just do a little tap and still stay on the throttle, and the response rate will be better coming out. He said, so I'm gonna try that now, which I thought was kind of cool. Can you boost a small block Chevy that has 12-to-1 compression? You just need lots and lots of octane. Okay, Wes, I'll check it out. On the 2.2 turbo junkyard motor, I pulled the pistons, had a 1 centimeter piece of ring, fell out on one ring, but the ring land was fine. So did the piece of ring, did it come out between the two rings? Because that's what normally happens. It normally doesn't snap the ring land off to the top of the piston. It breaks between the two rings. So if that's what happened, that's pretty normal. Oh, the Pontiac base block. Yeah, 481X. That's real high dollar stuff. Have you got any interest in sim racing or only IRL racing? Are those my only two chances or two choices? Given your Honda knowledge, what can I do to a D16Y8 for hobby stock circle track classes? The real estate similar have to be stock parts and PCM. Can you advance or retard the camshaft? That helps. You can port the heads so that they don't look like they're ported. You can mill the heads so that they don't look like they're milled. You can change the camshaft so it doesn't look like the camshaft has been changed. You can mill the deck, because if you do that, you can get the piston up and get the compression up. You know, there are various ways that you might be able to weld an offset grind crank. I mean, there are different things that you can do. We normally use a -8 line for, I think, for 1,000 horsepower stuff. That being said, we've run it with stock fuel rails, which are much smaller than that. $300 plus CFM 799 heads or stock 823s LS3 heads. You will make more power with the 799 head. If you take a look at the video that I have up comparing the Trick Flow 225 heads, which is about what you're saying there for the 799 head, versus the LS3 head, the 799 head is going to have a smaller chamber. It's going to offer more low-speed power than the stock rec port head is anyway. And then what happened when we put a good cathedral port head in compared to the factory rec port head, a good cathedral port head makes more power everywhere, and by a pretty good amount. There should be a lot of tuning videos out there I haven't watched them because I'm not a tuner and I don't want to go into that part of the automotive industry. And I have some pretty good guys that have shown me what to do anyway. Can you run a test on making smog legal horsepower for us SoCal guys? Yeah, I'd have to go through and make, I mean, we're running it on the engine dyno anyway, but you just have to take a look at all the smog legal stuff and kind of pick from that. If it's like a 5 liter, the lucky thing is there's lots of smog legal things that you can buy for that make good power. Three G's on this kid pad. That'd be nice, huh? Yeah, the calculators are good. The guys that really did the remote blower thing were Freiberger and Finnegan. They ran the boost caboose where they ran another motor that was driving the blower. And then, but the problem is throttling the blower and that other motor and stuff. And they really struggled to get it to work really well. I think that there's a better way to do that, but it was kind of cool because they had a second motor running the blower and then the discharge from that blower running up to their motor. And so, you know, in typical kind of roadkill kind of deal, but it was interesting. A transfer case from a 4x4 to use the front axle to drive a blower. But then the blower is going to be driven in relation to vehicle speed though, right? Final, where did the piston break? Is it the top part of the piston above the first ring, or is it in between the first and second ring? Ooh, supercarts. Oh, so in real life, I didn't even know that there are acronyms for these things that you're talking about. So is sim racing like racing on a computer? I don't ever do any of that. The last driving game that I ever played, I drove. My buddy Gary Sheehan has a some sort of simulator that he races with a bunch of like top name racer guys too, and I forgot what it was, but I drove that and I thought it was pretty cool, and I could get used to it after a while. I was driving on a track that I knew, which was Sears Point, or what Infineon or whatever it's called now, and so I got used to that, and it's fun, but for me it's not the same as although the cool thing on his is when you look around, you can look around and you can actually see the umbrella girl standing there and your crew chief and all that. So they've really gone a long way, because the last one that I played before that was Rush. So if you guys have ever played Rush, you know what I'm talking about, and it was awesome. And I usually pick the VW van, but that was one where you got to jump and spin around and crash into people. And so we were always, when Gary and Matt and all of us guys would get together, we would always go for fast lap. And so, you know, that was fun, but I like racing on the track much better. So are the supercarts the lay down ones? Because those are really fast, especially when the guys put wings on them and stuff. Mike, excuse me. Why did the Kenny Bell Supercharger fall out of favor for the Ford 5-liter Windsor guys? The reason I think is because he didn't have an intercooler on it. I think it would have done better. And when he first came out with those, they didn't have bypass valves on them even, because I remember when they introduced that. And then when they put, you know, bigger, like the big Blowzilla or Flowzilla, and then Mammoth, I think, came later on, the big inlets for them. Because when they first came out, they had fairly restrictive intakes. They were originally designed for the factory 5-liter HO lower manifold, and then they did one for the GT40 ones. So even though the blower, that twin screw blower, is really good, the rest of the kit, which now has like got a huge resurgence in popularity. So I think that there are guys, they've reintroduced that kit and guys really want that. It would be a better kit, in my opinion, if somebody made a dedicated lower manifold that they could run the blower on and have it look like the 2 or 3 or 4 valve modular kit, where they have a blower, they have a rear fed inlet for it, and then they have an intercooler sandwiched in there. That would be even though they're giving up runner length effectively on the 5-liter deal, I think it would be a better combination overall if they had an intercooler on it. I remember seeing, I was at some sort of press release or something and driving go-karts, and Eddie Lawson was there. He gets around pretty good. Stock 6.1 Hemi, rings gap for 200 shot, cam 11 coin compression on 93. You're gonna run the 200 shot on 93. I mean, you should at least put good gas in it when you're running nitrous on it, or at least a lot of guys will plumb the good gas to the nitrous, and that can help too. Check out Lawrence LT Tolman channel. He swapped in an 8.1 big block. So is it a stock one that he put in? Because for $3,000 we can make a 4.8 make a lot more than a stock 8.1. Roman, thanks. Yeah, if you can send me pictures of this stuff, that would be great. Hanging out way out in the corners of 130. And you're like a couple inches off the ground. That's always exciting. Jay, you'd be surprised what you can get away with an adjustable fuel pressure regulator and turning the distributor. You can do a lot of stuff. Oh, Wayne Rainey gave you a ride? Yeah, I bet that was exciting. John's here. Oh, so these aren't lay down ones. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I know that those were pretty aero. $557 big block, 1100 Dominator on methanol. Nice. 5.3 versus a 6.0. I had that video up already, but the bigger motor, they always make more power. You pick up RPM faster with one ring on a 2-stroke. Is that what you're talking about? Cereal is not soup. So I figured out the issue with twin screws on twin charging, or at least Gail Banks did. His twin charging that he was doing was on a diesel, right? And I thought that he was running, I thought the problem with that was that he was running his blower dry. Head gaskets are the limit. Okay, cool. .3 is not a lot of compression for a turbo. The issue is real world density. You have a Whipple that wants to make 20 pounds regularly, drive it to make 5, and feed it with turbos. So why would you spin it much, much slower and take out the response rate? If you're only using 5 pounds of it, then why don't you just get it out of the way? So Brandon, the VR stuff is really cool. Like I said, when you had this stuff on and you're turning around, you can kind of see all around. You can see the other people in their cars and stuff. So should I think about that for investment? Well, Admiral, you're right. There definitely would be more parasitic loss the faster you spin the blower. Somebody's designing twin cam heads for an LS. I thought that Mercury Marine already had those. You have a 2.5 Chrysler TBI short block. I want to throw a head on it and run 9-to-1 compression, but I heard that's too much and will detonate and crack and melt the piston with the stock ECM. A lot of that stuff, a lot of the things that you're inputting in there come from all of the problems that they had from people not tuning it. It's very easy to add more boost, to add compression, to change the cam timing, to randomly put different size injectors in there, randomly try different timing levels. But the problem is nobody had control of that. They weren't going in and programming these things with any success or any professionalism. Later on, I think that they got much better at it. But a lot of guys blew stuff up. And when they blew those things up, that became the gospel. Oh, you have to run these motors at 8-to-1 because the engineer said that these things have to run at 8-to-1. Yeah, they have to run at 8-to-1 so that they can run on the lousy gas that guys are going to put in there and not detonate, and they're going to be running on the knock sensor the whole time. But if you do it right, you can do a lot more with that, and the motor will make more power at 9-to-1 than it will at 8-to-1. It sounds like a good plan, Admiral. Let me know what happens when you get that done. He's only spinning the blower to 11,000 RPM. A 4.8 should get you better fuel mileage than a 5.3, but it's not going to change much. You can vary that way more by how you drive than which one of those engines you choose. Yeah, Speedy. Do you have ring gap in your LT1? Because that's going to limit how much nitrous you can run, and other things that you've done to the motor. The motor needs to make more power for you to be able to add more nitrous. So 100 shot is fine, and that should work good. You probably could go to 150. Cameron, just tell me what kind of power you're trying to make, and I can tell you what turbo you need to run. There's a lot of good T3, T4 hybrid stuff. Oh yeah, there's not a lot of engine speed for that because it was a. You also want to know about the M90 Thunderbirds. I feel like they're fairly unknown. I found 2 of them in the wrecking yard not long ago. I put some welded AutoZone. Why did they have to be welded? Reman heads on a motor. The coolant was mixing in the head. Why was the coolant mixing in the head? I've never seen that. I've only ever seen water get into the oil on one motor that I have, and that's because I think we cracked something. Yeah, I thought Mercury Marine did twin cam heads. I'd like to LS V6 swap. Cyclone. Doesn't your Cyclone already make good power? Oh, blind guy, you have a Suburban. You're not going to get good mileage from either one of those. You probably wouldn't notice any difference between those. The 4.8 might struggle a little bit on something that's that big. And a turbo would be good. You're not going to put a turbo on for fuel mileage. You're going to put a turbo on for power. Two GT35s on a 454. You're getting into a possible problem. I think I would pick something else. If you're not trying to make 1,000 horsepower, then they'll work. But if you're trying to go into 4-digit stuff, you probably should pick something else. J truck cam. Would for a 5.3, I would normally pick a stage 1 or the Truck Norris cam. So Admiral, you want to run a compound deal and running on 91 or a 93? Oh, they welded the cracks. Okay, yeah, that's I don't like that. Blown turbo big block. The good power is relative, right? Is it typically okay to run 8 to 12 pounds? That's like a 50% swing there from 8 to 12. So that's too big of a swing to make that statement. And then the problem is you don't know what the stock ring gap is. And also, if you try to run 12 pounds on a stock 5-liter, it's going to make this 1 horsepower level. If you run 12 pounds on a motor that has heads and cam and intake manifold on, it's going to make much more power. With stock ring gap and you try to run 12 pounds, there's a really good chance that you're going to break something. Just put ring gap in it. And then you don't have to worry about that. Then you just have to worry about breaking the block. Wes, I'll put the email, and then I got to get going. Did everybody get to go over? I put up the paste. I'll put up the there's the link again if you guys haven't gone over and taken a look at the video beforehand before I post it up so everybody can see it. Mike, boat motors are the same. I haven't seen Vice Grip Garage's recent video. Yeah, the max speeding guys are making a pretty good push into YouTube and social media and stuff. All the ones that I've run so far are good. Yeah, the LT5 in the original ZR1, but that's not a standard small block though. That was a dedicated motor built by the guys from Lotus helped designed it, and it was done by Mercury Marine. Running 12.5 pounds on a stock 305 with no ring gap. Nice. The question always is on a stock motor is you don't know what the ring gap is if you haven't taken the motor apart. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's enough, maybe it's not. That's always the problem. Best budget short block by 2011 CTS 8E. What's wrong with the short block that's in it already? .800 wheel horsepower if you have the original motor and put ring gap in it and LS9 head gaskets and head studs and the right camshaft in it and enough boost. If you've got a good blower, it will certainly do that. Ring gap for most of the thing is like 28 to 30. So you have 100,000 miles on it. That's just when they're getting good. All the big bang motors were more than that. But just take your motor, and it will make you feel better, put forged rods and forged pistons in. There's lots of good ones out there. Summit Racing has their Pro LS stuff, K1, Wiseco, JE, SCAT. There's a lot of good stuff. I know I'm ready for the RB also. You didn't get the rings on the junkyard motor. I didn't get the rings on the 5.3. Yeah. When am I getting a big 632? I'm not at the Hoonigan level of importance. You did a vice grip garage motor convert. I'll have to take a look at what they're doing. How long will the 5.3 last with the extra 300 horsepower? You mean from that nitrous? Not very long if you don't have ring gap in it. I think we ended up hurting that motor. No, turbo doesn't make you push the pedal a little less. It does exactly the opposite. I like the guys at Vice Grip Garage. I like their stuff, and I obviously would certainly be able to help them if they wanted information. So if anybody's looking for a camshaft, I still have one of those little cams. If you're building a 4.8 or 5.3 or even a 6.0 and you want a mild cam for it, let me know. I still got one of them left. I've got to get going. Thank you guys, Richard. Let's see, Admiral. I haven't run a dedicated test, Admiral, on a bunch of different octane boosters. So I don't know how well they work. I know all of the people that I've spoken to. We have some guys that work for Unical, and worked in their performance division, and they ended up starting Rocket Brand Racing. And so we're pretty good friends with those guys, the guys from Lucas Oil. And so I've got to talk to a lot of chemists about octane booster. And the things that they were telling me about octane booster are that these guys that are promising, oh, it changes the octane by 10 points. It doesn't do that. It changes it by 10 points after the decimal point. So if it's 91, it changes it to 91.7 and not 98 octane. So, and I've used them in the past, and I think that they help, but I've never run a real dedicated test where we've run the motor and got into detonation and then could actually data log that and duplicate that, and then put octane booster in it and get the fuel up and run it again. And we've done E85 stuff where we've run it on pump gas and then run it E85 and it makes more power. We add more timing, it makes more power. But even with that, I don't know what the detonation threshold is, because we don't go to that. We don't try to break the motor unless we're doing a big bang. Then we try to break the motor. Thank you guys all for showing up. I got to get this. I've got to get the thumbnail up for the video so I can get it posted up so everybody else can see it, and not just you guys. Thanks for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.